Thank you ever so kindly, ladies and gentlemen. The case Mark and I want to present to you today is a thought experiment, and it's quite simply as follows. You have discovered incontrovertible proof that God does not exist. Mark and I say you should destroy that proof. I think that's pretty clear, pretty fun. So I'm going to tell you why you should do that for sort of three basic reasons. I'm going to tell you why the existence of this information will be so damaging to individuals, why it will be so damaging to society, and finally I'm going to tell you why there is no obligation to truth whatsoever. So let's start by talking about individuals. Because what's going to happen to individuals when they suddenly find out that their basis for their belief and the most important perception in their existence has turned out to be false? They discover that there is no God. I think we have several huge things that would happen. First, I think they'll be racked by fear. If you've lived your entire life in the expectation that when you die, you will go to heaven and that you will live forever, that you will get to be with the people most important to you, and that you will live in happiness, then that is an incredible source of comfort. To suddenly be thrown into a position in which you know that your life is it, and when you die it is all over, I think you will be racked with fear when shown that there is some new terror that you did not believe exists. I think that's a huge problem for individuals. Secondly, there's suddenly a huge fear of the unknown, insofar as you lived in an ordered universe, in which things make sense, in which you knew what was moral, in which you knew how things work. Suddenly, everything is confusing. There is no reason behind everything. And if anything is going to shatter your worldview and make you live in a condition of fear, I think it is that. I think individuals will become depressed insofar as they lose the feeling that there is someone who cares for them, that there is someone who is looking out for them, and that their life will ultimately mean something, and that they are important. We think it undermines their conception of morality. We are not suggesting it is impossible to construct a system of morality in the absence of God, merely that if your conception of morality always relied upon God as a premise for that morality, then removing the prime agent from that will leave you in an incredibly difficult position. Sure, you could reconstruct some new moral basis, but that is an incredibly challenging intellectual thing to do. And I don't think most people would have the capacity for that, causing a breakdown in their moral order. I think there'd be massive self-doubt in that you realise you've lived your entire life following instructions from a God that did not exist, ordering your life based on the commandments of a being that did not exist, and everything you have done was pointless and foolish and wrong. That you go from someone who is special, who is loved, and who is touched by the divine, to a mere pathetic creature that is going to grow old and die and no longer have a place in the world, will be inevitably, irrevocably destroyed and removed from reality. And under those circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, I say that dealing with life is going to be so incredibly difficult that you will have committed a terrible assault against all those people when you deny them that source of comfort. Sarah?
Isn't it better to know the truth as soon as possible so you can start living the life that you want to live, as opposed to repressing something like a homosexual urge so you can go to heaven?
No, you never have to find the truth. And Mark and I believe that you can live, even in the world in which there is no God, we think you can live your entire life in the belief that He does exist, and we think it is better for you to live your entire life in the belief that He does exist. So what's going to happen to society? The thing that we have to recognise that this completely undermines the legitimacy of all religious institutions. Every church, every religious charity, every mosque, every synagogue, every business that they support, every business that has profits because of the existence of these institutions. That's going to totally destroy the social fabric and the way in which our society works. Recognise that there are huge economic costs. If things like the Hajj stops happening, the vast amount of money that is made merely by virtue of the transportation associated with it, with like sleeping associated with it, providing food associated with it, totally undermines that aspect. It's just an example of the sort of cost. Socially, imagine if religious charities disappeared. It's not like the state couldn't play that role, but the fact that the state as it currently exists relies upon them to play that role means that with their disappearance, again, a huge number of people are not going to have the means they need to survive. Further recognise that the intellectual basis for many of the most important institutions in our society rely upon some conception of God. When the United States Constitution says that all men are created equal, and suddenly the question is, by whom? And the answer is nobody, then it calls into doubt the very basis of legitimacy of that Constitution, of every monarchy, of every constitution that calls upon the idea of a divine being or a divine right. Consider what happens in a theocratic society. When it turns out that the very system of government is based on lies, I can think of no better cause for social chaos than that. Consider the backlash against the individuals who taught you these lies your entire life. How a priest is going to be treated, how a rabbi is going to be treated. When it turns out that they told you to live your life in a certain way, according to certain moral precepts that it turns out are totally untrue. That they took your money, that they took your obedience, and in return they gave you nothing because it was all a lie. I say those individuals and the social good they can do is totally destroyed. I say their safety is in great danger, and again, we think that is totally unacceptable. So why do we think it's okay to tell this lie? because I think we can all agree that there are certain truths we would rather not know. If you are happily married and you love your partner, and you would have loved them for the rest of your life, to learn that they cheated upon you can bring you only anguish, and knowing that truth is worse than living a lie that can make you happy. We think we would all make that decision, and I think I've given you reasons why you should make that decision here, precisely because it would be so harmful to know the truth. But in a more philosophical sense, we think it is that a lie can serve truth, and this specific lie does. I ask you to turn your attention to the intellectual debate that exists between believers and non-believers about whether there is a God. I can think of no greater debate to have contributed to our knowledge of philosophy, science, morality, than that debate about whether religion is true or not. Furthermore, we think it's impossible to continue that discussion once you've revealed this incontrovertible proof, precisely because you have the answer, so we've lost an incredibly important intellectual debate. In other words, the lies serve truth. But I don't even believe it's a lie, ladies and gentlemen. If we're in a set of circumstances in which I can prove there is no divine being, that does not mean that God does not exist in a very meaningful sense. But there are chairs in this room, but in a certain sense they're merely collections of atoms that happen to be in a certain shape. It is my mind and my set of beliefs and perceptions that turns those atoms from a random collection of objects into a chair. In the same way, every time someone does a moral deed, an immoral deed, in the name of God, then God's hand is at work, and whether there is an arm behind it or not, He is real, and that when you tell the lie, when you believe the lie, it becomes truth, and truth is served, we propose.
Hear, hear.
I thank the member for his remarks and call upon the member opposite, whoever so it may be, to open the case for side oppositions.
Hear, hear.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, we think if you are this person who discovers that there is no God, that this is a fact about the world, that you ought to reveal it. We're not going to say that, like, you should be forced to reveal it or whatever. I mean, there's no mechanism to force a person to reveal it. What we're saying here today is that you ought to do it for lots of philosophical reasons. I think this is a great philosophical debate, and we're really going to engage with it. So first of all, we actually think that given the fact that we now know there is no God, the only thing that can free people and make us the most free and maximize our quality of life is knowing that. Because a lot of people follow religion, follow tenets like repressing homosexual urges, not having sex before marriage, not doing all these things under the belief that once they get to heaven, it'll all be worth it. If you know you're not going, we think you should maximize your utility during life. Because lying about this doesn't change the fact that when I die, my last chance to be happy, my one chance, is over. So we think, how do we have the best possible life you could, Mr. Speaker? How do we maximize human potential on Earth? How do we make sure that you live every day to the fullest? We think people ought to know this. Because repressing my urges, spending lots of time going to church, spending time fasting for religious holidays when I don't need to, and not eating, spending time sacrificing for my religion is not worth it. Because every single religion in the world does have this notion of sacrificing for the greater good, repressing your urges for the greater good. And we're not just talking about things that hurt other people, like murder and stealing, but we're repressing things that could help you, self-actualize as a human being. Yeah, use the word. Things like, your sexual fulfillment, consensual sexual fulfillment. Things like, eating food you don't want. If I were Jewish, which I'm not, and again, if there was no God, I would eat bacon, okay? Like, I totally would, all right? So, only because we give Jews the chance to eat bacon, we think we win. Okay, all right. So the fact that these religious rules are very restricting, and they don't necessarily make people happier, the only reason why people usually follow these is because you use that, like, Pascal's wager. It's better if you get to heaven. But you have to sacrifice a lot of things along the way. So if we know that the lie doesn't change anything, I think it's morally wrong to keep it up, because people can't be happy while they're alive, and that's the only chance you get. And the fact that you know that, so you can fulfill your happiness while you're alive, you can live every day to the fullest, you know you don't get a second chance, but you don't share this knowledge with the world, I don't know if that's morally wrong, so I'm not a philosophy student, but it's kind of mean. Yeah.
Obeying those religious rules is not something that's a price to all of us. I think people gain a lot by the order and structure and belief they have from knowing that they should pray, that they should fast.
Take karate or something else that teaches you discipline, okay? Alright? There are other ways to find order. There are other ways to find discipline. Lots of people do it by, like Zen interior decorating, by karate, stuff like that. Do things that are going to help you in life. Don't sacrifice for a God that doesn't exist if the God doesn't exist. I'm not saying you shouldn't sacrifice if the God does exist. I'm just saying we know He doesn't now. So don't sacrifice for a religion that doesn't exist. If this is the one chance we get, you need to maximize that. We think that that's true. Other things that would be eliminated: religious conflict. Okay? Look to every single genocide that's ever happened. There's been a religious conflict element. Fewer people would die. I think that's probably good. So more people get more time while on Earth to self-actualize and enjoy their lives. So not only do you know that you can do whatever you want and you don't have to stop having sex with men in order to go to heaven and you can eat bacon, but fewer people are going to kill each other in the name of God. Fewer people are alive, more people are alive for longer. So you maximize the amount of time people have on Earth. We think that's a really good thing. So that's, probably on that point alone, I think we win. We don't think that this will make people immoral. We don't think the only reason why we don't kill people is because Jesus said not to kill people, or the Talmud said not to kill people, or the Quran said not to kill people. We think it's so that they won't kill you, right? Because atheists don't necessarily go around killing everyone. We already have atheists, right? We think it's because you want to treat others the way you want to be treated so that they won't kill you and you have order in civil society. So we don't think that the world would necessarily be chaotic and that you'd be in more danger. We think you'd be in less danger because you wouldn't get people who are willing to blow up buildings so they could go to heaven because they know that they can't go to heaven, if this is in fact the case. You wouldn't get religious conflict where people are willing to fight and sacrifice everything for their God. And people can live every day to the fullest, knowing that arbitrary rules that just serve to limit their pleasure, like who you're allowed to have sex with and what you're allowed to eat, and what other things like that wouldn't exist. So I've done implicit refutation, now I'm going to do explicit refutation. People will feel abandoned. Well, you know what? They're going to have to find a new value to living. Existentialists are often, reasonably happy people. There are lots of happy atheists. Why? Because they know they have every day to live to the fullest, and that once they're dead, they won't care anymore because they lose consciousness. We think that that's okay. We think that, I don't think that rabbis are going to be persecuted in the street. Like when we realized that the world wasn't flat, we weren't persecuting scientists who thought it was initially. We just realized it's a new scientific discovery. We think these people can be integrated. We're not all going to be mad at them saying, you jerks, because they didn't know, okay? When we have a civil society, they'll be protected by the civil society. They won't be murdered in the streets. We think that falls in our right in the house. We don't think that all debate will stop just because we can't debate about God. We debate about a lot of other things. Look at this tournament. I haven't debated about God once so far, okay? This is the first time, ever. So I went on that point. All right. The fact that the lie becomes the truth? No, because when you die, you don't go to heaven and there's no God. So the lie doesn't become the truth unless it makes a God. And if we could all collectively make a God by using The Secret and willing it to be so, I think, great, let's imagine the best damn God ever who gives us all free ice cream. But we can't do that according to this scientific discovery. So don't do it, Mr. Speaker. Don't do that. We think that at the end of the day, people need to know the truth so they can live their best life. I'm sounding like Oprah, but it's true. Live your best possible life. And if your best possible life isn't going to be judged by the standards of an arbitrary God anymore, but judged by your own standards that you can live within without hurting other people in a civil society, we say, go for that. That's liberating, that's freeing, eat lots of bacon, have sex with whomever you want, do whatever you want. We say that's a great life. And when you're dead, you won't care because you won't be conscious anymore. We can think about things like that. Okay. So really, I don't think that we lose all basis for moral dignity like the US Constitution. Lots of countries are secular. I don't think theocracies will all fall apart. A lot of, I think that people will adapt, people will evolve. We've changed lots of religions. We're not all ancient Greeks worshipping 10 gods anymore. We survived that transition, so we think we can survive this one. What's the best society? The one where people have the opportunity to live the way they really want to live and know the goals. Put it this way, Mr. Speaker. If you knew you couldn't go to law school because it wasn't going to exist in 5 years, would you really want to work that hard in undergrad, or would you want to drink more beer? I think you want to drink more beer. Say law school is God, and beer is still beer. So for all these reasons, we beg to oppose.
Should I just start? Sorry. Well, I drank too much beer in undergrad, Mr. Speaker, and I think that is somewhat significant. What we heard from Sarah throughout her speech, and what I think you need to understand the opposition principle as being, is that these things can happen, these shifts can happen, and they have happened, and they can happen without catastrophe. She tells you something very telling at the end of her speech when she says, look, We used to live in these crazy polytheistic societies, and we moved from that quite well into the societies in which we exist today. Mr. Speaker, those were gradual shifts, and that's the critical nature of what Richard and I are telling you here today. Can society survive a shift to total understanding of a lack of belief in God? Richard and I aren't really sure. What we know is that it cannot survive an immediate shift, and actually much of Sarah's own analysis explains exactly why that's the case. Basically what Sarah tells you is, look, many people who believe in God are choosing to live a highly restrictive life because they believe in some sort of a greater reward that's coming for them in the end. And we owe it to these individuals to let them go and do whatever the hell they want instead of worrying about the afterlife. Mr. Speaker, I want to set this up as a very basic dichotomy. You can either have the moral comfort that Richard and I believe individuals have in believing, or in their case as far as they're concerned, knowing that there is something coming next. The ability to not live with existential fear. The ability to not be plagued by the idea that no matter how happy we are on this earth, for 80 or 90 years, it all comes to an end. That, Mr. Speaker, regardless of how much beer you drink, how much sex you have, how much fun you have, is a terrifying prospect, that your consciousness ends. It is, Mr. Speaker, the basis of nihilism, and for damn good reason. If nothing is eternal, then nothing we do here matters. No amount of fun that we have matters, because it is transient, Mr. Speaker. Sure.
It matters right now, and that's all you have, so why shouldn't I take advantage of that? Because there is no God under your model.
Right. So here's the problem. Your choice is, be a hedonist and have lots of fun, and suffer the existential angst of knowing that it all ends, or live a life where you don't have constant existential angst, and you still are able to gain a large amount of happiness. These restrictive elements of religions, yes, they are restrictive. They aren't things like constantly never eat, constantly never enjoy yourself. Let's use Sarah's example. The question that I would ask you is, Mr. Speaker, would you rather have bacon and know that your life doesn't mean a goddamn thing in the bucket of the universe? Or would you rather abstain from bacon with the belief that something in this world is of consequence? That some action that you take will resonate through history, will resonate through some sort of a transcendental dimension, and will matter on a scale beyond your 80 years on this planet, which are finite, which are limited, and which contain nothing of importance. What Richard and I would further suggest is that not even the absence of that moral comfort is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is yanking that moral comfort away from individuals who already have it now. We would suggest that people who never have that moral comfort in the first place do a hell of a lot better believing that their lives are finite than people who spent 30 or 40 years of their life believing that there is a God, believing that there is some cosmic significance to the universe, and then are smacked in the face with a new notion. The notion, verifiable on their side of the house, that they don't matter and that nothing matters. We would suggest that it is that rapid shift which would be so devastating to people's abilities to enjoy any sort of meaning, existential happiness, any sort of self-actualization. We believe that that is where the true harm to these individuals would come. The second major idea that we get from Sarah is that of religious conflict, right? She does look a little bit at the practicality, and she suggests, look, we can do away with religious conflict. Here's the problem, Mr. Speaker. The tensions are age-old, and though we may have been using God as the justification for the tensions and the justification for the wars, the crimes against one another remain. The acts have already occurred, the anger is already there, new reasons will be found to fight. Not every war has been fought over religion, not every war has been fought over God. Let's be honest, we are a fundamentally militant race, species, whatever we are, I don't know. People like to punch other people, and then we develop better boxing gloves. Mr. Speaker, we'll find new things to fight about. But what we'll lose is the ability for religion to help us in reaching reconciliation, in reaching peace. Recognize that when wars have been fought over things, just a second, calm down, that aren't religion, one of the things that we have used to allow for reconciliation, to allow for progress, has been religious commonality. That's gone on their side of the house. Last one.
You also lose religious enshrined homophobia and sexism and a whole bunch of other forms of religiously sanctioned discrimination.
Right, so we'll just get it in politically enshrined forms of discrimination too, right? Like, hate to break it to you, there are plenty of homophobics, plenty of sexists, plenty of racists, whose religions aren't telling them to do those things. In fact, many of them, I hate to say it about my fellow atheists, a lot of my fellow atheists are terrible people who hate everyone. Also, as long as we're on this subject of, well, whatever, fine, forget it. I'm not going to bash atheists any more than I have to. Let's move to what Richard said, speaking of atheists. The first thing that Richard talks, oh sorry, and I had a good joke here, which is that Sarah can't resist opping any case I give you with arguments about death, war, ha ha. Okay. My first argument from Richard was that individuals are going to be deeply, deeply and negatively affected by this. We talked about the idea that they're going to be racked by fear, etc., etc. Again, what we heard from Sarah is they simply have to develop a new set of values. They have to say, okay, fine, there isn't any eternal significance to any of this, so there's something else that I'm going to value instead. I'm going to create my own moral code. I'm going to say that that matters. I'm going to enjoy myself and say that there's some sort of consequence to enjoying myself. So the first, what part of last one was confusing? So the first thing that we would suggest is that it's difficult, absent some sort of a higher power, to imbue your actions with any meaning. And so unless they can give us a good way to do that, they've got to defend individuals finding a way to give their lives meaning without anything greater than this life. But what Richard and I would further suggest is that the nature of the abrupt shift is particularly problematic here. We would suggest that it's far easier for someone starting from scratch to develop their own moral code and their own justifications for living a life. We would suggest that somebody who spent 30 years of their life as a Roman Catholic and now has that rug yanked out from under them and someone says, find a way to live your life and have it be meaningful, but by the way, there's no Jesus and he didn't die for your sins, we would suggest that that would be fucking impossible. And that there's a damn good reason that people do go to these religions. It's because it's the only way that many people can find these meanings. Now take those people who couldn't find the meaning without the religion in the first place, take away their religion, so now they have this old set of assumptions, and tell them to build a new set of assumptions. Good fucking luck. We talked to you about the harm of society. First of all, I just don't think that these arguments get any response from side opposition. And like, obviously they're not as important as the philosophical stuff around, but we do think they matter. There will be chaos, there will be problems. Sarah says she just doesn't believe that democracy will crumble. Well, Richard and I just do, and Richard explained why he believed that to be the case. We further believe that there will be backlash against clergy. Civil society can't protect everyone everywhere in the world. Finally, we talked to you about the idea of truth. We hear from Sarah that we still debate about things. But the debate over the existence of God and the nature of our own existence in the universe has provided the most fruitful philosophical discourse about what the good life ought to be of anything in history. Don't take it away. For the final time, I stand in opposition.
All right, and I thank the member for his remarks and call upon the Leader of the Opposition to speak for 10 minutes.
Hear, hear. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So I guess what they're really standing on is this kind of Nietzschean idea that God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. And what we would say on our side of the house is that we would take maybe a more existentialist view, because the existentialists like Camus and Sartre basically took this perspective that the fundamental question in life is that if God didn't exist, why not just kill yourself? And they answered that question. They said that we should still try to strive to live the good life in the absence of the divine, in the absence of the hereafter, that we can still derive utility, benefit, happiness from the life in the here and now. And Sarah and I are going to stand on the fact that we think people can do that. We think even people who used to believe in religious beliefs, even when they find it out, they will discover other systems of morality. Because I don't really think that religious systems of morality underpin our entire society as much as they think. I think, in fact, a significant portion of Western liberal democracies and modern secular democracies are underpinned by secular principles, by a rejection in large parts of theocratic ideas. So I have one constructive point, and then I'm going to engage into lots and lots of refutation. So the first one, like the logical corollary is, if we lose God, we also lose the church. To which Sarah and I say, awesome. Right? Because we think it's very important to force humanity to stop relying on the church, on the book, on the scripture, as their justification, as kind of the end of the argument. We think that no, like these things should not be arguments, and they certainly shouldn't be the end of the argument. We don't believe that people should be allowed to rely on the church or the book as the regulator of their human conduct. Consider a lot of examples. The reality is that as people reject religion, as people become more secular, and we have to understand for a minute, Mr. Speaker, that in a large part, secularism is in fact people discovering or at least rejecting large parts of different types of religious beliefs. Like, the reality is, like, if we all really believed that there was a God, like, none of us would eat shellfish, like, none of us would, like, have sex with other men, like, some of us just do that anyway, but, like, you know, like, the point is that, like, I think everybody here, everybody in this room, like, accepts to some belief that, like, not everything in the Bible, not all aspects of religion are true, right? And so we think that that's actually a net good thing. Because we think problems like condom use, which many religious beliefs abhor, the idea of gay marriage, the idea of like taking a fisting class on a Saturday. Like we think that these are all things that we think that we think that churches ban all of these things, or at least abhor them, and we think that they're good things, all of them. And we say that even if you think they're not a good thing, then you should have to defend that belief on a rational and logical ground and not on a theocratic scripture ground. And we think that once people have to do that, objections to things that are objectively in our common interest, objections to things like condom use in sub-Saharan Africa, we think that once you don't have the God argument on your side, you lose the argument and everybody benefits. We think that that's a pretty strong benefit on our side of the house. We want to live in a world where a papal encyclical has no more force and effect than a ridiculous post on QSidNet, because it shouldn't. We want to live in a world where an imam's fatwa has no more force and effect than your cranky racist uncle that nobody listens to, because it shouldn't. And we want to live in a world where Pat Robertson is regarded with the same amount of deference as the ShamWow guy, because he shouldn't. And we think, on our side of the house, that once you make logic, once you make reason, once you make moral systems that are based on logic, on reason, on the common good, on utilitarian grounds, once you make that the lingua franca of public life, then we actually get better outcomes in terms of all aspects of social policy. Once we can all agree that there is no God, and that there is no prophet, and that like anybody who claims to be is just crazy, then what we tell you on our side of the house is we can start to solve some of the world's most serious problems. Because as it stands, religion is no longer something that enlightens us. It is something that for the most part enslaves us. It shackles us to age-old conceptions of morality written by people who were probably not literate themselves at the time. Like, we think that the minute you lose any sight of God, we think most organized religion goes away. And like, if the argument on their side of the house is going to be, well, like, religious do like lots of good works and things like that, we think that the humanitarian goals will exist under any utilitarian or non-God-based morality system, Mark.
Absent that higher power outside of humanity, where are you getting the tenets of this moral code?
Okay, like, we just don't believe that every single moral code that has ever existed in society has its basis in religion. I've given you an example of a very rich philosophical tradition of existentialists who believe that there is a moral code, that people have agency, that we should respect them as sort of rational human beings. Nothing in their argument, nothing in their philosophy depends necessarily on the existence of God. Rather, they reject outright the existence of God, but like they aren't advocating the mass genocide of people. They aren't advocating like nobody using condoms, right? We think that you can have a moral system that isn't premised on a belief in the hereafter. And what Sarah told you, I think, still stands in this round. That ultimately, we want people to be able to self-actualize. And that if we're going to tell them that they shouldn't self-actualize, the reason we give them shouldn't be because some some omnipresent God told them not to, right? We think that that's a shitty reason. We think that people have a right to know that their self-actualization is being like limited by basically the Wizard of Oz. We think that that is wrong. All right. And fundamentally, like, and I have to say this, like, if there is no God, then nothing matters except our enjoyment of life. Like, the only thing that matters is our enjoyment of life and how we benefit from it and how we perceive it as human beings, right? Like I think we're all going to, I'll take you, Richard. Okay. So what we would say on our side of the house is that if like, we're both sides are in agreement, right? That the only thing that matters if there is no God is how much we enjoy our lives and how we live them right now. And I think Sarah and I have fairly convincingly told you that we will end up living better lives as soon as we start understanding, as soon as we yank the curtain back and realize that the wizard is really just one of us. So, what did they say? So the first thing that Richard tells you is that this is very damaging to individuals, and that without this fear, that people will fear death and they will fear uncertainty if God is revealed not to exist. And we say that's better than fearing hellfire and damnation. Like should you be a sodomite? Okay? Like, we think that that's okay. We think people should have to accept and confront the uncertainties of life. We think that once we do that, we have a much richer debate than the one that exists between whether God exists or doesn't. And anybody who followed that post on QSidNet knows that is not the richest debate to be had in the world. But I've also told you that we don't lose our conceptions of morality. We still can live our lives. There are millions of people in the world who don't believe in God. Those people still get up, they still go to work every day. Maybe some of them have better lives than we do because they don't feel shackled to like a moral system that was like meant to party like it's 1889 BC, right? We think that that's the problem. And the other thing is that we think a lot of people have doubt now about religion. The reality is that almost nobody in this room follows their religion, like the written tenets of their religious beliefs to the letter. And we think that those doubts being confirmed isn't going to like shock the consciousness of people so much that they're going to like go out and kill themselves or each other tomorrow. The second thing Richard tells you is that it is absolutely crucial to society for people to have a belief in God. He says like churches will close and like the Hajj, like nobody will go visit the Hajj, and like I don't know, like I think that like once the religious tenet that like once everybody realizes there's no God, then like they'll open it up like the Islamic Disney World, right? We think that you know, like there's no reason for people not to go. But moreover, what we would tell you first of all is like we don't think the fact that people give billions of dollars to churches is the most socially useful way of using that money. Like, we think that, like, there will still be commerce because people will need to eat. There will still be, like, you know, there will still be agriculture. Like, the world isn't going to grind to a halt. But moreover, we would tell you that even other countries, they try to tell you, right, that the U.S., the framers of the U.S. Constitution relied on the existence of a divine, right, to create their conception. But I actually think that it's the reverse. The framers of the U.S. Constitution, the founders of Western liberal democracies, in large part rejected the absolute divine right of kings to rule. Like, the reality is that most of the founders of the U.S. were deists who believed like that a rock or like Richard's timepiece had as much God in him as any of us and anybody above, right? The reality is that we live in a society that is founded largely on a secular moral code, on a secular system of ethics. And we think that you don't lose that. If anything, when we take away these other things, we enhance it. We allow people to have a common language. The last thing that Richard tells you is that we lose the debate. Oh, sorry, actually, I want to engage with something that Marx said. So Marx' big point of argument is that more than anything else, it's not that people finding out that there is no God is problematic. It's that if they all find out at once, right? That like it's going to be this massive shock to the system, right? That we need a belief in the hereafter, or else everyone will just go out and kill each other. And we would say, first of all, we don't think that that's true, right? We've been slowly eroding core tenets of religious belief for a very long time. The reality is that Darwinism was a massive shock to the system of most Christians, right? But they didn't go out and like kill people. In actual fact, most of them, like, if you're a hardcore Christian, you probably don't believe in Darwinism. So we think that even if this proof was presented, like, a lot of people probably just wouldn't believe it either, right? Like, I don't want the debate to get mired in that, but like, that's like, if you're a hardcore Christian, you're not going to believe the evidence that there is no God because you don't believe any of the other evidence that the Bible isn't literally true. In my last 50 seconds, Richard said that we would lose the debate. But I think that the most important, if we destroy this evidence, we lose the single most valuable piece of information. And ultimately we lose the ability to have another, richer, more colorful, more productive debate. For all of those reasons, I stand.
I thank the member for his remarks and call upon the Prime Minister to close out the round in his 4-minute address.
Here. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I think you've heard an incredibly compelling defence of why if I were to create a new world without a God, I should not put the church into it. But that isn't the debate we're having. We're having a debate about a world in which people already have those beliefs. A world that has been structured around a belief in the divine. And removing it is very different from not creating it in the first place. And that's where Mark and I's harms come in. We've been told by side opposition that an atheist can live a moral, good, happy, productive life. And I certainly hope that's true, because that's what I try and do every day. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not what this debate is about. Just because someone can be good in the absence of religion doesn't mean that when religion is taken away from them, they instantly will become so. Shattering your worldview is incredibly hard and incredibly traumatic. And learning that everything you have ever been told by your parents and the people you loved and respected was a lie is going to terrify you and shatter the way you view the world. Under those circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, do you think under those circumstances you could come up with a sort of rational, intellectual, secular view of how the world should be organised, of how morality should be organised? I don't think most of you could. I don't think I could under those circumstances, because that is incredibly hard. that you're alone and you're scared and you're being it's being demanded of you, that you come up with what has taken generations for us to do. That's why when someone rejects their faith, that's why when someone changes their belief system, it is hard and it takes time and it's scary. That's why most people have great difficulty doing that. So I don't think people are going to change into the paragons that Sarah and Brent would like them to be. I just don't think we can do it. They tell you that religion destroys your ability to develop and become a good person, and give you a basket list of things that religion has done that is bad. But for every war crime that they list, I can list an act of charity or goodness or compassion or love that has happened. And they say, but those things don't require religion. True, but the genocide doesn't require religion either. People do good things and people do bad things because there are good people and bad people. And they will come up with excuses for them under either side of their house. The thing is, religion doesn't make us act in this bad way. What religion does, it gives us some sense of purpose and order in the universe. They give you this argument that people can maximize their hedonism. People can enjoy things in the best way possible. But I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you were on a plane and you knew that plane was going to crash, you knew you were going to die, would you rather have the comfort of knowing that you were not alone, that you were loved, and that you were going to see your family again? Or would you rather have the comfort of a hand job and a hot dog? Ladies and gentlemen, I would much rather know that things are going to be okay. Because in that case, ladies and gentlemen, I can relive the remainder of my life in a way that isn't constantly racked by that fear. We are all on a plane that is going to crash. We are all going to become nothing that is destroyed and removed from the universe forever. Therefore, I think we should live the sort of life that we can enjoy, that we can be safe, where we can take comfort in these things. Sure, some people don't need that. Some people can just rely on the notion that they want to have a good time, that they want to have fun, that they want to eat bacon. But I think there are a lot of other people for whom the knowledge that they are insignificant and trivial and will be wiped from the face of existence is so terrifying and so justifiably terrifying that it means that anything we do in the cosmic scheme of things is fundamentally irrelevant. I think it is better to let those people believe that their actions matter, that their morality matters, that their life and their love and their passions actually mean something, because then they will actually have the motivation to do those things. Sure, there won't be the same number of rules telling them what not to eat, but there will be a driving force that means that they want to do those things. There is an empty hedonism to side opposition when they say all we need to do is just maximize things that we enjoy. And I ask you, why will you enjoy them? Why will that pleasure mean anything? And why will your existence matter if you think it is all a joke, if you think it is simply going to be over? I say it will not, ladies and gentlemen. A lie can set us free, and this one does. Thank you.